Hey guys, it's Liz. Welcome back to my homeschool channel. Today's video, I wanted to chat with you about history periods and specifically how we are doing homeschool with Ambleside Online, which is where every kid is in their own history period based on the year. And so it's a 6-year cycle, and then once you get through that 6-year cycle, the kids go through it one more time, but with more difficult books. And that is a lot different looking for a family than if you're doing family style history together all in the same time period, such as Simply Charlotte Mason or some of the other curriculums that are out there where everyone's in the same time period. So if you're new to this channel, I have 3 kids doing Ambleside Online this coming year with grade 3, grade 5, and grade 6. And this is our 3rd year doing this. And so it's kind of evolved as different readers are in different places. Our first year was crazy because I was doing most of the reading to all my kids. And I started handing off reads to my oldest as he was able, but it was a lot of me reading, and in that situation, history in 3 levels was not actually a really good thing for our family that year. We kind of pushed through, and the 2nd year that we did Ambleside Online, which was this last year, I had a fully independent 5th grader. He read all of his stuff on his own. That was a huge leap, and I was so amazed. My 4th grader was doing about 50-50 of her history reads on her own, and then I read everything to my 2nd grader, who had a very light year, I would say, in general. It wasn't hard to do that for him. So it got better. And then this next year, I'm expecting that I'm going to probably have 2 mostly independent readers, and then helping my now 3rd grader with his reads, and those pick up a little bit for him and get longer. And so it's kind of evolved a little bit each year, and so I just want to speak to that, what it's looked like for us to use it, and then what it has compared to in my memory to when we did family style, which was we used Beautiful Feet books when my oldest was really young, like 1st grade. And then we switched to master books, I think, when he was in 2nd grade, and we did their early American history. Loved that because I could combine my then 1st and 2nd grader together. It was a nice checkbox in the day. It was like, here's our, math, language arts, history. It's just done. And we were just doing it together while the 2 little kids played and were not in school yet. And then we swapped over and tried Gather Round for a very brief period, I think 3 months, and it just wasn't for us. I have a video on that, but their history curriculum just wasn't my favorite, the way that it was presented. And so that was the period in time when I was doing a lot of research, stumbled across Ambleside Online and Charlotte Mason homeschooling, decided to make the switch, and then it was really between Ambleside Online and Simply Charlotte Mason for us. And one was family style, one was different time periods for each kid, and it was just really, really hard to decide. And so I would love to hear your family's experience in the comments. This would be super fun to read through and helpful for other parents considering, but I just wanted to give our perspective on why I've liked having different time periods and why it's worked well for our family, even when I was terrified of it and not sure if it would work well. Family style worked okay for us when I had 2 students that needed to listen in and 2 kids that could just go play. Now that we have 3 kids that would be listening in, doing school, and a toddler, I think history family style would really stress me out because just when we do literature read alouds with 3 of them in the same room, which actually usually means 4 because my 4-year-old wants to be wherever we are. It's just loud, and it's really hard to keep people from, I have 3 boys and a girl, and it's just hard to keep the boys from touching each other and trying to wrestle each other and making weird sounds with their mouth. And it's just like tricky to get more than 15 minutes in. And if I'm already using our together time, to try to keep people quiet at the same time, and we're doing our literature read alouds together, and that's another chunk of together time. We're definitely getting family time. We're getting family read aloud time, but to also do family history time right now, I kind of can't picture how chaotic that might feel because it's just hard to get a lot of together time in when it's reading books. We're working on it, and we're working on ways for the boys to get their energy out, and they're learning how to be respectful, but it's still hard. And so I have really liked that with Ambleside Online, we have different years, and the kids can kind of go off in their corner and read their history books for that week and narrate, and then they're done. And then another kid can go off at a different period of time, and maybe that kid needs my help reading their history book, but we can do that in a room with the door shut if we need to, if there's a lot of distractions around. You know, I don't know, it seems like because everybody can kind of go off and do their own history read at a time, either that works for them, or when I'm free, but you know, the other kids are, say, working on something else in their day, like math or copy work, I can still take one of them out and do reading aloud time. So I feel like it's actually worked really well to be scattered as far as like who does what, because we're not waiting for the perfect time when everybody can gather and read together. That's a really hard thing to do in our home for some reason. Then another thing that I actually really didn't intend to see, but I've enjoyed seeing, is that the kids accidentally are hearing little snippets of their siblings' time periods and what their siblings are reading. And usually that comes across when they're narrating to me. They will be listening in to maybe, you know, my oldest is talking about, you know, Civil War era stuff, and then my middle daughter is narrating on the Revolutionary War, and my son pipes in, "Oh, I remember that from last year." And then my, you know, younger child who hasn't studied either of those two, he now has had just kind of some accidental, you know, within earshot info coming in, and then by the time he comes up to that year, he's maybe heard that name before, and I don't know, it's just kind of on accident. They are hearing little bits of each other's time periods, and especially with my oldest two, who are talking about, you know, things because my oldest has read what my middle child is now reading. They'll have these little connections and talk about it. It's really cool, and I didn't quite anticipate that would be a huge benefit of revisiting those time periods with different kids. Another thing that I've noticed is that as conversations come up or people come up, sometimes we'll just clarify the time period so that everybody is aware of, like, oh yeah, that person was during the Revolutionary War, or oh yeah, that happened during the Civil War, or that was actually World War I time frame, you know, and just starting to kind of classify, because there are lots of different people and events happening within all of their years. They're starting to kind of classify events and people based on these, you know, 100-year chunks of time or whatever. So another thought that I had is that if we had chosen to do family style for us, we would have gone with simply Charlotte Mason. And I have heard great things about that curriculum. Part of me is a little sad that we aren't going through it, but we just can't do it all. And but one of the things I was thinking is, because I have kids in such different forms and different, you know, years, the younger kids would be listening in, and then the older kids would have assigned books that I would not necessarily be reading to them, and I would not be reading out loud during our together history time. And so there is and would still be this element of the older kids would have assigned reads. Even though it's the same time period, they would still have assigned reads that the younger kids wouldn't have and that I wouldn't necessarily have, because I may not have the time to read this and this and this for them if they're able to. And so there would still be an independent side of learning in that sense, where yes, they're in the same time period, but no, it's not all going to be together time, if that makes sense. So one thing that Ambleside Online has done such an amazing job at, and this is one of my favorite parts about using it, is that within the time period of that child's year, they have all of these aha moments from the books kind of overlapping pieces and information and names. And so it just seems too well planned sometimes if you're following the books as is. And so there will be figures and events happening in, say, a literature book that is the same time period as the history book that's also mentioned in another history book. And so they're having all these people like, I've heard of this person before, or that person was in my, you know, history book like so many weeks ago or whatever. And so they're just getting these crossover moments of like the same things and people that are happening in this time period. And I think it's really helpful for them in making these connections. And they've definitely planned that out. That's not an accident. And so to skip a book from Ambleside Online, totally fine, totally doable, but you may end up missing some of the connections that they've kind of on purpose planned. So keep that in mind. And so family style wise, if we were to use a different history curriculum, not Ambleside Online's, and say we were to cross out every history book that they have and go use something else, but I kept, say, Ambleside Online's literature and poetry and everything else, the kids would learn history and they would learn they would read these other good books from Ambleside, but they would not have all of those aha moments because there are just so many crossover mentions of things and places and names within that kid's year. So that's been one of my favorite things that I don't think we would get if we used a different curriculum necessarily. So is there a better way to do history? Is family style better than having different time periods or vice versa? I don't think it is. I think it is a preference for your family, and if you try one way and it's just not working, give yourself the freedom to try another way. But as far as time spent as a mom reading these books, I think that as the kids are getting older, I actually am having more time. There is this kind of rough middle year period where they're not necessarily independently reading difficult books yet. That's the period of time where if you have multiple years, that Ambleside could be a real stretch. In that situation, I would recommend leaning on some audiobooks. I wish I would have told the earlier me that our first year of Ambleside to lean on audiobooks because my voice was going hoarse and it was just super spread thin. While I do miss the idea of family style learning that I remember when the kids were really little, I don't think it would be quite the same way for us now, having four kids with 3 in school. I think that the distractions would just be so great that it would be almost more difficult to do family style now. But I'd love to hear your opinions on it. I'd love to hear from larger families who have multiple kids, how you've done it and what you've liked, what you haven't liked, especially if it's a Charlotte Mason curriculum. One thing that we have actually done, and I've enjoyed seeing this, I think it's a really sweet keepsake of my kids learning, is we have decided to keep a paper timeline instead of a book of centuries. 4th grade is about the year they recommend going from timeline to book of centuries, but I'm just having my kids continuing on with their paper timeline. And so this is my 5th graders this year, and he's added a lot of cool things to his. Got some on the front and some on the back, and that's just been a neat way for him to make connections and to start to see different people and events that have been read from previous time periods and how far apart they are, or things that are happening at the same time he didn't realize. Just in case you're curious what Ambleside Online has scheduled year by year for time periods, this is what they have on their website. That should give you a little better idea of what time periods are covered with Ambleside Online and how quickly they're moving along in the different years. So hopefully this video was helpful for you. Thank you for giving it a thumbs up if it was. That helps me to know this is the kind of content you like and want to see more of. Also, be sure to subscribe to my channel if you enjoy homeschool content and Charlotte Mason Ambleside Online type updates. Thanks for watching.